What's going on, guys? This is MartyrsBrigade99 coming to you once again with another session of Dark Souls PvP. Alright guys, we're back at it once again with another volume of the Battle of the Uploader series. Alright, before we get started, I'd like to offer a thanks and show of appreciation to good old ShortDudeX123 for his participation in this particular video. Alright, now, good old Short and myself have a pretty extensive history with regard to Dark Souls PvP. Number one, he was in a series of mine a long time ago. I think it was probably around April or May. I think I did a two-part battle. I think it was probably either a Rumble in the Jungle series or my very first Battle of the Build series, wherein part 1 I faced Triple as a Pyromancer, and part 2 I faced Shortdude as a Pyromancer. Now, if you guys were to go ahead and check out that first video where we faced each other a long time ago, you guys will definitely notice a difference in tactics. Number one, back in the past, he did a lot of just blind parrying. I mean, that guy would just be parrying the air in some cases, right? And then another few videos that we had, you know, some of which I was in the Undead Berg, I was also talking about that, you know, just basically saying how, you know, he will hit you with a parry, but at the end of the day, that guy throws out like 30 parry attempts during one match. But if you guys notice his tactics, he has definitely improved as well as I have definitely improved. Because, you know, my tactics also are different. A lot of things that I did in the past, I no longer do now. And that's what time and experience will do. Right? So this is, you know, not only good for another addition to the Battle of the Uploader series, but I also like the fact that we both get an opportunity to see how we have improved since the last time we had a series of matches against each other. Because like I said before, you know, he is featured in my parry tutorials. He was a comrade of mine when I was doing a couple trolling videos wherein he was my partner when we were beating up, for the most part, forest hunters. Right, I did a two-part video series titled Trolling the Forest with a Shortdude. Right, and he was on my side. But we're going to go ahead and face each other. Alright, so this was a pretty good series of matches. I really enjoy myself. One thing I like about his playing style is he's not one of those guys that are evasive and, you know, you have to chase them. You know, he's engaging at all times, no matter what he's doing, whether he's dual wielding, single wielding, claws, whatever kind of build, that guy is always engaging. Because, I don't know, me personally, I really do not like to have to chase anybody. I really don't. It is very annoying to have to chase somebody. And I think this is a good series of matches. Now, another thing that you guys are going to notice is that I will get roll BS on a number of occasions. Right? But the thing that I like about this series is that although we both know how to roll BS, it is far from his primary means of engagement. I really like to stress that point because there are a number of guys that have asked me for a series, and I basically decline them. It is very rare that I decline people, but I decline them. And the main reason is because anyone who uses roll BS as a primary means of engagement, it is not exciting to fight, nor will it be exciting as far as the viewer's standpoint. You know, I refuse to be roll BS for 25 to 30 minutes. I absolutely refuse it. Because at the end of the day, he's mixing his tactics, I'm mixing my tactics. If I get a roll BS, I do. If he gets one, he does. You know, but at the end of the day, we have a wide variety of tactics and strategies that does not center around roll BS's. Alright, so I just want to go ahead and stress that point, because for the most part, you know, I will kind of accept, you know, Battle of the Builds if I think the build is unique, or Battle of the Uploaders in many cases. But if it's someone who is a known constant roll BSer. I'm sorry, it is not fun for me to play against, nor is it exciting for anyone to watch someone just sit here and just roll behind you for 20 minutes, BSing and BSing and BSing and BSing. Right, so like I said before, his roll BSs were strategic. To the extent that I landed one on him, they were also strategic. But if you guys will see, right, I'm not just rolling around him constantly. He's not flipping around me constantly, just looking for opportunities. No, he's mixing in R1s, R2s, parries, the whole nine. So if he seizes an opportunity, he seizes an opportunity. But it's not one of those situations where I feel like, holy crap, man, all I'm doing is getting BS'd. I'm not having it. Alright, so enough about that. I just really wanted to stress it because there were a couple guys who wanted to participate in either a battle of the builds or battle of the uploader series, and I basically told them, like, listen dude, I mean, I refuse, right? You love to roll BS, I don't have a problem with it. If that's how you fight, if that's how you engage, that's you. But I mean, I just refuse to be BS'd for 20 to 25 minutes, because you know what, the way I see it, it may be a little it may take a little more techniques, you know, than your standard lock BS or some other type of BS, but at the end of the day, it is still a BS fisher nonetheless, in my personal opinion. Right? And I'm not saying anything about it not being legit. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is, I am personally choosing to not be roll BS for 20 minutes. It's not fun. Alright, so enough about that. Now, for the most part, I think he wanted to start off with his claws, right? Because when I first approached him, you know, I asked him, did he want to go ahead and introduce his claw build? But unfortunately, we only got one, maybe two matches of him demonstrating his claw build. So, I mean, it's still all good, right? Because he put forth an awesome performance nonetheless. Now, for the most part, to the extent that I got wins, I really feel lucky. Right? And, you know, some of you guys may say, dude, have a little more confidence in yourself. Well, it's not that I don't have confidence in myself, but the main reason why I feel lucky is because he is playing with a, with a faith, what it appears to be a faith/pyro build, right? Now, you know, it's not that I'm lucky because it's difficult for me to deal with the castings, right? Whether it be Wrath of the Gods, Emit Force, or the Pyromancies. I'm not worried about that. But he is incorporating the replenishment miracle, which, you know, to the extent that you guys have checked out the, I think it's called the Haven's Butcher. I did a Battle of the Build series wherein someone was using the Butcher, and basically he used the Butcher's Knife, replenishment, and I think the Sanctus, if I'm not mistaken. That video is kind of old, so I can't really remember off the top of my head. But in that video, we basically talked about the benefit of using replenishment, for which you get, I think it's like 10 HP per second. Right, so to the extent that you're able to last a full minute, you will have basically earned an additional 600 vitality points. Right, so in other words, let's just say for the sake of argument, he has 50 in vitality with a ring of favor and protection. Right, that would give him 1800 health points. Now let's just say the duration of the match lasts for at least a minute. That means I would be obligated and tasked with having to deplete over 2,400 vitality points. 2,400 to the extent that it lasted a minute. For the 1,800 that he has with his plus 50 with the ring of favor and protection. In addition to that, the 600 vitality points that have been replenished with the replenishment miracle. So this was very difficult for me. Now, you know, if I was just kind of fighting someone who was, you know, kind of not all that hot, replenishment wouldn't really make a difference, right? But whenever you're playing against a skilled fighter, someone who has a lot of experience, if not more than what you do, It is very difficult. Same situation existed when I played against good old the Haven's Butcher build. Right, and you guys can check that out in the Battle of the Build series. I think that's probably volume 4 or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, because I was also having a hard time with him, right? So like I said before, if they were a noob or someone with not really all that experience, I mean, even though they're getting the additional points, it's not really all that difficult. But whenever you're playing against a skilled player, someone who basically knows all the ins and outs of Dark Souls and has extensive experience with playing the game, I mean, you will definitely be in trouble. Alright, so to the extent that I was able to get a win in, I really felt lucky. Alright, so if you guys can tell, he's kind of like a pyro cleric. That's kind of what it appears to be, right? Because he's mixing in the pyromancies in addition to the Emit Force and the Wrath of the Gods, along with the replenishment that we just talked about not too long ago. And like I said before, this is an awesome match. This guy is always engaging. I don't have to chase him. You know, he doesn't have to chase me. We are always engaging each other, right? Whether it's at my detriment or his detriment. And I think that's a good thing, because when it's time to fight, at the end of the day, it's time to fight. Right? No one wants to be playing tag. Alright, so you know, as with all videos that I do, I mean, I never tally, but it definitely felt like I was getting my butt whooped in this series, right? Because he was throwing together some awesome combinations, just like right there, right? I think that was an awesome move. If you guys get a chance, especially if you kind of missed it because you're doing more listening than watching. He did a high speed. I stunned him with the mace. He quick switched and was able to get a high speed parry in. I think that was a good move. And that was a roll BS on my part. But like I said before, you guys can go ahead and watch the series from beginning to end. There was no constant roll BS's in this series. And that's what I like, right? You know, I don't mind if you incorporate a lot of the offensive and defensive strategies in the game, but no one's going to get BS for 25 minutes. I mean, that's just really not fun. All right, now, basically, there's nothing fancy about my build. I kind of switched back and forth between my Dex build and my Strength build. You know, I kind of didn't decide. I decided not to use any caster builds. I have 2 hybrid casters. But you know, I'm pretty much good with the pure melee for the most part, right? I don't need any castings. You know, they're kind of cool looking, you know, especially when you're kind of throwing off the good combinations. But that was a nice parry right there. But I'm really not into it. Now, he's definitely doing a good job with mixing in his castings, right? He's not one of those guys that call themselves a cleric, but all he's doing is Wrath of the Gods, you know. He's not one of those guys that calls themselves a pyro, but all he's doing is Great Combustion. He's doing an awesome job at mixing in a lot of the tactics. Now, why is this a battle of the uploaders? Well, just recently, to the extent that you guys are not familiar, not too long ago, I think a little bit after Christmas, he basically started streaming on Twitch, in addition to uploading a few more videos onto YouTube. Right, so you guys, you know, if you're kind of interested in what you see, please go ahead and support his Twitch stream, in addition to checking out and supporting his YouTube channel. Right, because I'm pretty sure you'll see a lot of good stuff on there. Now, I don't really know if he has a regular schedule. I think it's just kind of random, but you know, in most cases, whenever I've had an opportunity to catch up to his stream, it's always been on the weekends. So you guys might get a good opportunity to check him out on the twitch.tv to the extent that you are interested. Alright, so we're back at it once again, and I am using my Strength build. And once again, to the extent that you guys are kind of new to the channel, if you guys are, you know, if there are some uploaders out there, and you guys want to participate in the Battle of the Uploader series, go ahead, send me a comment, guys. I basically, for the most part, I would basically fight anybody, and like I said before, this is not about, kudo points or who's the best. Like I said before, Dark Souls has an awesome community in my personal opinion, and to the extent that a lot of these guys have a wide number of subscribers and supporters, may it be Twitch, may it be YouTube, I think this is a good thing for the subscribers to see, right? Case in point, I know there's a lot of guys out there who really likes Shortdude's gameplay style, right? Because he has a good following on his Twitch, although he's still relatively new, right? And all this in addition to the guys that just knew him, for fight clubs and anything else that he has participated in. In addition to that, I have my own following, right? So, I think it's just a good thing for people who have their own personal favorites to see how their own favorites fare against each other, right? So any of those guys out there, hey, you guys want to battle the uploaders, battle the builds, go ahead, contact me. Now, like I said before, if you're kind of brand new, right, like 1 or 2 subs, 1 or 2 videos, like 30 seconds, just because you're not trying to highlight a parry or something like that, I'm sorry, dude. I'm not going to just, be adding anybody. But if I see that you have invested a little time, I see you're just as dedicated to Dark Souls as I am, go ahead, leave me a comment, and it will hopefully be a good experience of us fighting each other in either Battle of the Builds or Battle of the Uploader series. Right, and I don't know how many times I've sent that invitation out, but hey, just spread the word. Anybody out there you think is a hotshot player, send them to the brigade. We can definitely get something started. Right? My only limitation, like I said before, if I notice that you are a roll BS fisher, it's not happening, dude, because it's just simply not interesting. Right? There's a wide variety of attacks. There's a wide variety of ways that you engage, and with roll BSing being a primary means of engagement, I'm simply not interested. Now, let's just kind of talk about both of our builds a little more into detail. Like I said before, it appears that he's using a Pyro Cleric build. Doesn't really seem to have any limitations. The only limitations that he may have, perhaps, is the poise points, for which I'm not really sure how much poise he has. And to the extent, and actually I can't really say to the extent, I don't think he does commentary. I know he kind of uploads a few videos from his Twitch stream, but I don't think he talks. Right, so unfortunately he can't really give his own perspective from this video series. Right, so I can't really, like I've said plenty of times, I can't really say what the weaknesses are from his point of view. I can just basically say them from my own point of view. And actually, I don't really see any weaknesses to his build, right? Because honestly, I have a Pyro Cleric, and unfortunately, it is on PS3 but not Xbox. And that Pyro Cleric is definitely a cool build to use. I really like that Pyro Cleric build because it has the variety of mixing pyromancies, miracles, in addition to the option to using either occult or divine weapons, or you could just go to plus 15 route. Right. So, like I said before, I basically don't really see any weaknesses. I think the only strengths and weaknesses basically depends upon the user. Alright, and honestly, I think that can be said about a lot of builds, because there are some builds, granted, that just may suck depending upon how they're made, but a lot of other builds for the most part really depends on the person that's using the build, right? Because in other words, there are certain builds that I might suck at, but somebody else may be a beast at using. So it really depends on the skill level, for lack of better words, of the user. Right. Now, same can be said with my own build. I'm using a strength build and a dexterity build. And basically the only strength and weaknesses really have a lot to do with my own capabilities. Whatever limitations that I may have on myself, that's basically would be my weaknesses and or limitations. whatever bonus I may have, with regard to, abilities to, mix in certain attacks, those are basically all the pros. And for the most part, that can be said about most builds unless you're truly dealing with one of those uniquely used builds. Case in point. Well, actually, I can't even say case in point because that's pretty much the same. And that's one of the reasons why, there'll be a lot of guys, they'll ask like, what do you think about this build or what do you think about that build? And basically the only thing that you can really talk about is maybe, to the extent the person is a new player, they may not really understand diminished returns or, something to that effect. But for the most part, when you guys are asking opinions about builds, for the most part, it's not the build, guys. It is not the build. It's how well or how bad you played the build. It has nothing to do with, necessarily with, how good the build is, right? Because in other words, the build has a user, right? The build has a manipulator. So it is not the build that was doing anything if, the player sucks or, if the player is awesome. So just keep that in mind, right? When you guys are asking about, now granted, like I said before, if you're kind of new to Dark Souls, then yeah. But for the most part, these builds are all about experimentation. If you're dealing with new weapons, and that was a good dead angle attack right there. If you guys are dealing with new weapons or whatever the case may be, it's not about asking other people's opinion. What you have to do is practice with the new items. Right? Because anything that's foreign to you, for the most part, will be difficult because it's foreign. Now, if you're kind of dealing with one of those easy mode builds, kind of like Spear Katana, I mean, it's kind of hard to screw that up. But, I mean, it is what it is. So just keep that in mind, guys, when you guys are asking about builds. Right? It has more to do with the user and not all that to do with, per se, with the build itself. Really depends on the user. Alright, so he's using some high-speed full throttle tactics right there, and actually he got lucky because I almost landed that parry. Alright, so he's trying to tighten me up with the Claymore action. Okay, run straight in for the BS. But guess what, dude? I can BS too. Right, I can definitely BS too. Alright, and actually, what is he going to do? Alright, so I guess he's just going to, maybe he is going to try to finish me off with it. Okay, well maybe not. I thought he was going to try to finish me off with the bow. Okay, so he just want to get in with the Claymore action. Not a problem. Alright, so I got him at a quick weapon switch. I think he probably ran out of stamina right there because if you notice, he was kind of going backwards and switching off from his weapon to his bow. So I have a reason to believe that he kind of ran out of stamina. I hate when that happens. Alright guys, well that is pretty much the end of it. This is the last match of the series. I know it was kind of relatively short, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said before, thanks again to good old Shortdude for his participation in the Battle of the Uploader series. You guys go ahead and check out the description box wherein I will include his YouTube channel in addition to his Twitch stream. And hopefully you guys will go ahead and support at least one of either his YouTube channel or his Twitch stream. I'm pretty sure you guys will be pleased. Alright guys, until next time, Martyrs Brigade.